thank you so much to everybody who's joined the summit. I know anyway, I know some of you, but I also know, I can see from the chat, I know that the reasons that you're here, that, you know, you really are incredible people. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing for our world. You know, a lot of my work does take me into rooms with leaders in business and academia, all kinds of places really, but it's when I'm in rooms like this that I feel that I'm with the most important people in the world, not only because of the work that you're actually doing on the ground, but because of the fact that you're willing to entertain thinking differently, thinking systemically in the way that's going to build the pathway for us to safety as a human family. So I'm really grateful to be here with you all today. Cheryl, may I share my my screen, please? Because I'd like to, maybe it's a bit more interesting. I will just talk, but I have some images which might be a bit more interesting than just watching me. So I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay. Let me see. Can you all see my screen? Oh, sure. Could you just indicate whether that's visible now? I'll just start from slideshow start. Yeah, I'm really delighted to follow John. It's not easy to follow John, but I'm very glad that I am, because I think he's made such an excellent summary of where we are. So forgive me if some of this recaps that. Yes, absolutely. We have to, this is the brilliant British Nigerian poet Ben Okri. He's telling us that we need these new forms of creativity and imagination to face this threat. And we have to be honest about where we are. We can only make a future from the depth of the truth we face now, which John did such an incredible job of summarizing for us. Well, I think probably everybody on the call knows this. We are in code red. This is what the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, you know, he's put that call out loud and clear at the COP 2 years ago. And so the reality is that we really have only this handful of years remaining to change our value and belief system to align with Earth's operating system. And that really, the heart of our belief system comes with how we're educated. This is the fantastic Professor David Orr's work. He points out that all of our life support systems, planetary support systems, are in jeopardy. But this, if you look, 80% of, only 3% of people go to university. 80% of our world leaders have been university educated. So what on earth have they been learning there? Because this is not the work of ignorant people. It is the result of work by people with BAs, BScs, law degrees, MBAs, PhDs. It's what we are systemically training people to do that is replicating the problems that we keep getting. So we really must challenge our education system at the heart of the transformation that we need in all our systems, our energy, our food, our transport, how we treat our rainforest, how we educate women, how we include women and girls. At the heart of that is our dominant cultural narratives, how we train ourselves, enable ourselves to understand our world and to think. The great Doris Lessing puts it brilliantly here. We are, when we go to school, or even it's wider than the school, because it's also our media system, our the information system that is imbued into us. It really is a process of indoctrination. And in recognizing that, we can break that indoctrination and we can make better choices. But what Ben Okri is saying as well, if we understand the wider story of the human family, how we got here, we can make better choices of how we move forward. But if we remain you know, imprisoned in the indoctrination that we have, the education system was designed post-industrial revolution. It may have served a certain group of people at that time, but it's so wholly out of step with what we need now that we have to recognize how it shaped us in order to break forward. And I just use this slide to demonstrate the depth of that, because here we have the Hollywood machine that steps in with these really powerful stories. The cowboys and Indian story, one you're very familiar with, with respect to everybody in this call. America has a very complicated history. It is built on large-scale genocide and slave labor, but the myth-making machine has turned that horror into heroism very, very deliberately through telling the story in another way to erase a past and to create this sense of greatness that possibly never was. if you contrast that with the incredible work of the First Nations professor Jack D. Forbes, I think the title of this book speaks for itself, Columbus and Other Cannibals. You know, he goes into the story from the other side of what people were seeing. I'll just spend a tiny minute on that. When the First Nations people saw, because what's happened to Earth is something called terraforming, which means whole-scale ecosystems have been taken out to either resettle in the colonial project or to use Earth's resources as, as commodities. And this was so out of anything that the First Nations people could comprehend. They called it, when they couldn't believe that they were seeing the wholesale destructions of the forests, of the buffalo, everything just coming down, that they called it wetiko. And they thought that this was a deep psychological illness that was based on power and greed. And they said, this is going to destroy our world and we won't be able to check it, and it will spread and it will take everybody's world unless we can rethink how we, unless we can work with these people to rethink how we live in balance with our ecosystem. So that's, that's going back a couple of 100 years, that they recognize the incompatibility of a system that's designed really to commoditize everything and to train people to go into this machine, as this incredible Vandana Shiva. She's a physicist. She's also an author and activist. A lot of her work is done on genetically modified crops. But she says, this Western education system, it doesn't really equip people to deal with, to understand ourselves really as part of a whole ecosystem. It really creates young people that can go into this kind of industrial production system, so that you either win. A winner looks like somebody who comes out on the top and then can themselves manage the process of commoditization, or you lose, in which case you become a kind of cog in the machine, a drone in the wheel, and you have to accept that you failed and that you can work on these kind of low-level jobs, as opposed to really understanding the gifts that human beings bring, which we each do, and applying them, to enable us to be stewards of planet Earth. So, what my work in pioneering Earth-led education does, which I suspect a lot of you on the call are also doing, is trying to shift away from this egocentric worldview, which sees man, and it is generally men, at the top of this kind of weird pyramid, where, where we're the apex predator, to seeing us as part of an ecosystem, because we all know that a system where an apex predator eats everything collapses, and we are getting to that stage. As John pointed out, we have a handful of years now to rebalance our ecosystem. We cannot continue to consume everything and expect the ecosystem to sustain us. So we're trying to shift from the earliest years, because I think young people land eco-literate. So it's really fostering that sense that we are an ecosystem, and that everything that we learn how to do, we learn how to do within the planetary boundaries and with respect for all other life on Earth. We know that we are an interconnected system, and whatever happens to us, as Chief Oren Lyons puts it so brilliantly, whatever befalls Earth also befalls the children of Earth, so that we now enable, we create stories, we create education systems, we create curriculum that support the web of life. So this is just a little picture from my book, Bright New World. This kind of, I'll show you another little slide earlier on. It goes just beyond education is a whole imaginative system to create young humans who are engaged, inspired, equipped to be the innovators and the entrepreneurs of a brighter world. Some of you may be familiar with the work of Buckminster Fuller. What we have now is children who come out of a school system primed to go into this economic, as I say, either the top, whichever place that their educational qualifications enable them to participate, they're still going into an economic system. And we don't really have the language to talk about sometimes what's happening to us, which is why I really like this word that Buckminster Fuller coined. It's called obnoxico. It's just people go into these jobs to produce more stuff that we don't really need in a system that's extracting resources at this a phenomenal rate, and exploiting often the people and the land that the resources are coming from, or the people in the process of making it, while you're being told that that's the only thing that as human beings that we can do. So, you know, creating a new language, I think, is really important to enable us to think about this, because a lot of the jobs that we're encouraging our young people to go out and take part in are really obnoxico. They're things that will just keep this system going, even though that they know that's very, very disheartening for young people at the moment, because they kind of know that that's the thing that's fueling their demise, but they're still being told that it's the only way to get ahead. So we really need to equip our young people to be stewards of planet Earth, because there's hugely productive work that we can do here. And we don't need to throw everything out the window. We just need to design whatever it is, whether it's architecture, whether it's energy, whether it's how we design our cities. All of these things can be done in line with Earth's life support system. And it's hugely valuable, hugely exciting, brilliant work. You know, when I take this stuff into schools, I've never seen children so motivated. They come up with such fantastic ideas. You know, many of them already think of what is already happening, even though that they don't know that. And it gives them, you know, it gives them hope that they can be part of co-creating this world where we all can thrive. And there's nothing stopping us doing that. We have left it till the 11th hour. You know, we are without a doubt in a perilous situation, but the biggest impediment to us transforming, stepping into the world that we can have, is the way that we think. Most of the solutions that we need, I've been told not to use the word solutions anymore, but interventions, because we are in such a critical state. They already exist. They're already happening. There's people already all over the world working on them. So if we tell that story early in the classrooms and equip our young people to be part of that, to be trained to be architects that think in line with planet Earth, to be trained to be engineers that work within the planetary boundaries, to be trained to be storytellers that tell stories of collaboration, of working together, we can have a chance of being part of a world that can thrive. This is a small project. I won't go into much detail on it because of time, but this is something I did in collaboration, or Planetary did, with the Blue Marine Foundation. So we created resources that talk about how to care for our oceans. We did it in a really a way that engaged communities of young people all around the world. So you've got the kids at the top are living on the Maldives, they're living on the coral reefs that the children in England are learning about how to protect. That's that top corner there with a little girl in the red shirt. At the bottom corner, you've got some children in Ascension Island. They're delighted because in that book, the pop-up that you can see is actually their home. That's that Blue Marine Foundation created that as a marine protected area. And so they can see their world popping up there. And then all the children talk to each other to say they all learned how to protect our oceans, how marine protected areas work. And then they could exchange their ideas and their experiences, you know, in real time across the planet, so that you could see whatever happened, you know, your actions that you take in the UK affect what happens thousands of miles away in the Maldives, or the action that these children are taking in St. Helena Island. Their whole island's become a marine protected area. Their whole community have learned how to fish sustainably. You know, they can tell that story to the children in these different parts of the world, so that you can see how regeneration can happen. And that will mean that there's food. The ocean as a resource can produce food for a long time and can be kept in great health. But the main point of this is, is thinking differently, that you can engage global communities of young people so that they are interconnected and they can understand the causes and effects of the action that they have on, in different parts of our ecosystem. So just very, very briefly on this. So you've seen the book Bright New World. That's kind of our core curriculum. It's divided into 12 systems areas, so that these are the things that currently are the biggest problems cause biggest pressure on the planetary boundaries: our rainforests, our oceans, how we travel, how we design our food systems, how we design our energy systems. But we're enabling with building the curricula so that the disciplines, multidisciplinary, work through those topics, and the children understand how these things can actually be made as part of the solution. And that's all wrapped up, as I said, in these imaginative stories, games, animations, films that create a mindset of care, of collaboration, of being part of a world that where our dream, I'll read a beautiful quote at the end, but we're not driven by these dreams of domination or these models of domination and destruction and extraction. You know, we create an imaginative environment where children are imbued with the values of collaboration, of care and nurturing. You know, this is, you know, it's fascinating the levels that you can do that. Just, you know, very quickly, this is an anthropologist called Wade Davies, and he grew up in British Columbia. And he said, you know, the forests that I grew up in, they just don't exist anymore because we just saw them as commodities. Whereas the mythology of the First Nations people, the Quaqua, they saw that as a, you know, a spiritually sacred place. You know, you've got the myth of Raven, which many of you will know. It doesn't mean that you take it literally, but it gives you this sense of these spiritually protected areas that are essential for human life to continue. So when your mind is shaped like that, it's impossible just to go in and hack those forests down without actually understanding the effect that will have on you. So it is creating or going back to, in a way, these kind of mythologies. A brilliant leader. This is Namonte Chemo, who many of you will have heard of. She's a very powerful Ecuadorian leader of the indigenous people, and she stood up against an oil company that was annexing, you know, huge tracts of the Ecuadorian rainforest, and she won. But she, you know, what she's talking about is I think she nails it brilliantly. She wrote a letter to an open letter to world leaders, and basically used this word, kawari. You know, we have immense power that you can see in this. You know, we can go in and we can bulldoze almost anything. We're at the controls now of planet Earth, but we don't have the wisdom that to know how to use that power. And that's what this type of earth-led education is about. It's about giving us that wisdom back to match the power that we have, the wisdom that did exist in earlier societies, not just First Nation societies and indigenous societies. I think, you know, many cultures did have that wisdom, you know, before this acceleration of commoditization of everything, as I call it, you know, the imperial project. So it is really learning again how to use the power that we have, the power that's accelerating as AI comes into play. We really must have the wisdom to use that, because if not, you know, we cannot find this balance again. So I think it's going to involve everybody. This is the brilliant Eldridge Cleaver, who was instrumental in the civil rights movement. You'll all know the quote. It's absolutely true. If we're sitting here doing nothing, I'd rather probably use a quote from the Dalai Lama here. He said, there's only 2 days a year that doesn't matter what you do. And he said one of those is yesterday, and the other one is tomorrow, because what we do today makes a difference. What we do today makes a real difference. We can act, and our collective action is what will take us forward. It's not, if we sit there and we say we're too overwhelmed, you know, we are then part of the problem. We have to find the small things that we can do, or some of us, the bigger things that will lead us forward, you know, to this place of the possibility of building these pathways to safety. I'd really like to recommend this book if you've got time. I'm sure you're all really busy, but it's by the brilliant Amitav Ghosh, and he looks at, when Tracy very kindly mentioned I'm writing a book on colonization and climate change, but it was very much inspired by Amitav's work, because it really does make you see our journey so much differently. When I mentioned very briefly this concept of terraforming, but really how the last 500 years have shaped our land systems, because we've used them either to resettle or as resources, but also in order to justify doing that, it's shaped our cultural narratives, our philosophies, the philosophy of the Enlightenment, the manifest destiny, the civilizing mission, the white man's burden. You know, we've told ourselves these stories that have enabled us to believe that we have a right somehow, and this is, or perhaps not even the right, this is the only way that we can live on Earth. And reading this book, or you know, there's other wonderful books like it. I would thoroughly recommend this one, though, is a really good step in unpicking that in your mind. It is that kind of liberation by being able to recognize how we got here, as I mentioned at the beginning, to be able to make these better choices for how we move forward, to think differently. That's the last section of my book, Bright New World. And I will read this quote to finish, because this is what I thoroughly believe, and I think this is what everybody's on this call really to be part of. The fantastic LaDonna Brave Bull Allard, who was so instrumental in the Standing Rock, standing against the taking of indigenous lands for more oil exploration. She said that a shared vision for humanity exists, whether we see it or not. Our task is to become receptive to it, to see it, to make it visible and activate it, using all means of communication so that our collective imagination will no longer be driven by dreams of destruction and downfall, but elevated by the possibility of worldwide healing and unification. It's such a pleasure to be with you today, because I feel that that's the spirit of the people in this room. So thank you very much indeed.